The traditional advice of going to school, getting a job, working hard, saving money, getting out of debt, and investing for the long term in the stock market is becoming increasingly obsolete. It may have worked in the past, but the financial landscape has changed dramatically over the past few decades. Let's stop and think for a moment. Why would anyone want to save money when central banks are printing trillions of dollars? When the money supply is inflated like this, the value of savings dwindles. Saving money in a world where inflation is rampant doesn't make much sense. If you look at the growing gap between the 1% and the 99%, it's massive and widening. The wealth inequality in today's society is staggering. The rich are getting richer, while the middle class and the poor are struggling to keep up. It's not just about money anymore, it's about a system that keeps this disparity in place. What many fail to understand is that it's not just the money that matters, it's how money is created, distributed, and controlled. And this, unfortunately, is not taught in schools. If you're following the traditional model of financial success to school, getting a good job, and saving money, you're already behind. The system is set up to fail you if you don't learn how to think differently. So the real question is, what do you do instead? In all of us, there exists a poor person, a middle-class person, and a rich person. We all have these personas inside us. The poor person worries about survival and is focused on immediate gratification. The middle-class person desires security, a steady paycheck, and a reliable job. And the rich person inside us understands that financial freedom comes from mastering money, creating businesses, and investing strategically. However, the educational system doesn't teach us how to activate the rich person inside of us. Instead, it ingrains the mindset of the poor and middle class: work hard for a paycheck, save money, and eventually retire comfortably. The reality is that this strategy no longer works. The mindset that used to lead to success is now obsolete. We are not taught how to create wealth or how to use money as a tool to generate more wealth. Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad. Poor Dad provides a sharp contrast between the mindset of the poor and middle class versus the wealthy. In the book, Kiyosaki explains how his rich dad refused to pay him a regular salary. Instead, his rich dad believed that a paycheck was one of the most damaging things you could receive. The reason for this was that when you take a paycheck, you are locking yourself into the mindset of an employee, someone who works for money, rather than someone who makes money work for them. This lesson greatly confused Kiyosaki's poor dad, who was a government employee and believed that paying someone a steady salary was essential. But Kiyosaki's rich dad was teaching him an entirely different principle. It wasn't that paychecks were bad, but the mentality that comes with receiving a paycheck is what creates limitations. When you rely on a paycheck, you become a slave to money. This concept, though controversial, is foundational to understanding the difference between the wealthy and everyone else. Kiyosaki's rich dad wanted him to think like an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is not bound by the constraints of a paycheck. Instead, an entrepreneur is focused on creating opportunities, taking risks, and innovating. Entrepreneurs don't rely on their jobs or fixed salaries. They create their own financial opportunities. This entrepreneurial mindset sets successful individuals apart from those stuck in the cycle of working for money. In entrepreneurship, failure is not the enemy, it's an inevitable part of the process. Most employees fear failure because they think it reflects poorly on their abilities. Entrepreneurs, however, see failure as a valuable teacher. They understand that setbacks and mistakes are stepping stones to success. I still remember the day I received my last paycheck. It was one of the most memorable days of my life. I had worked for Xerox, and when I received my final check, I felt both excited and uneasy. The check was a $30,000 bonus, but I couldn't ignore the feeling that I was still trapped in the traditional financial system. That moment marked a turning point for me. It was the moment I realized that I didn't want to depend on a paycheck anymore. I wanted financial freedom, and that meant stepping into the unknown. At that time, I had a colleague named John who came up to me and said, "You're going to fail. You'll be back at Xerox." I looked at him and said, "You may have failed, but I'm not going to fail the same way. I'm never coming back." That was the defining moment in my life, and it shaped my approach to entrepreneurship. The key takeaway here is that if you fear failure, you will never break free from the chains of a paycheck. If you believe that failure is a possibility, then you will find the strength to keep pushing forward until you succeed. Entrepreneurship is not about avoiding failure, it's about using failure as a tool for learning. If you can embrace failure and learn from it, you will become stronger, smarter, and more resilient. On the other hand, if you let fear of failure control you, it will paralyze you, keeping you stuck in the same cycle for years. Debt is one of the most misunderstood tools in personal finance. We've all been taught that debt is something to avoid, something that is inherently bad. The reality, however, is quite different. Debt, when used correctly, can be an incredible tool for building wealth. In the traditional financial model, we are told to avoid debt at all costs, to pay off our loans as quickly as possible, and to save money for the future. But in today's world, where central banks print money and inflation is rampant, this strategy doesn't work anymore. In fact, I have embraced debt and used it to my advantage. Recently, I refinanced $300 million worth of debt, lowering my interest rate from 5% to 2.5%. This move saved me millions of dollars in interest payments and increased my cash flow. While financial experts continue to preach about getting out of debt, I'm here to tell you that debt, when used correctly, can help you build wealth. When I came back from Vietnam in 1973, my rich dad taught me an important lesson. Don't fear debt. Learn to use debt strategically. Debt and taxes are the two key tools that the wealthy use to grow their wealth. The poor and middle class, on the other hand, are burdened by debt. They don't understand how to use it to their advantage. One of the most eye-opening experiences for me was talking to my doctor. He had just made $1 million in a year and was excited about his success. But when I asked him how much he paid in taxes, his face dropped. He told me that he paid $750,000 in taxes, leaving him with only $250,000. That's a lot of money, but when I make $1 million, I keep $1 million because I don't rely on a paycheck. I make my money through investments in real estate, and I use debt to leverage my investments. Understanding how to leverage debt and taxes is one of the keys to building wealth. As an entrepreneur and real estate investor, I've learned how to use debt to my advantage. For example, when I invest $1 million in real estate, I leverage that money by borrowing from the bank. The bank will lend me up to 4 times what I invested, allowing me to control $4 million in real estate. This is the power of leverage. The rich know how to use debt to create wealth, while the poor and middle class get stuck in high-interest debt. Taxes, too, can be used strategically to protect your wealth. By understanding how taxes work, you can shield your income from the government and keep more of your money. The financial system we've relied on for decades is now obsolete. The world has changed, and so must our approach to money. The idea of saving money and avoiding debt is no longer relevant in today's world. Central banks are printing money at an unprecedented rate, and that money is losing its value. The key to thriving in this new world is learning how to use debt and taxes to your advantage. The rich understand this, and they are taking full advantage of the system. Meanwhile, the middle class and the poor are getting crushed by inflation and taxes. The financial advice that worked in the past no longer applies today. If you want to succeed in this new world, you need to adopt the mindset of an entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur is about adopting a different mindset. It's not just about owning a business or making money. It's about thinking differently and being willing to take risks. Entrepreneurs focus on creating value, scaling businesses, and using leverage to build wealth. They don't rely on a paycheck. They don't fear failure. They create opportunities where others see obstacles. Most people are stuck in the cycle of working for money, but entrepreneurs understand that money works for them. They know how to make money flow into their lives by creating businesses and investing strategically. Entrepreneurs have a different relationship with money. They see it as a tool to create freedom, not as something to work for. The traditional financial model of going to school, getting a job, saving money, and investing in stocks is obsolete. The world has changed, and if you want to succeed, you need to adopt the mindset of an entrepreneur. Learn how to use debt to your advantage. Understand the power of taxes and leverage. And most importantly, stop working for money. Start making money work for you. By adopting an entrepreneurial mindset, you can break free from the old financial system and start building real wealth. The world may be changing, but if you learn how to think differently, you will thrive no matter what happens.